Yeah, Run It Back Nation, Sixers Nation, what is good? It is I, DJ Eastwood, Run It Back Philly, and I have Sean and James with me from the Pick Swap podcast, Pick Swap Media, and we're going to talk some Sixers, man. We're going to talk about what we just saw. You guys, a lot of subscribers have been saying, "Where's the post game lives at?" And ever since I started streaming the games live on 2 different platforms and stuff, I guess it's just hard for me to get up and talk about it for another hour by myself. Like, hey guys, post game live. I'm going to say all the stuff I just said for 3 hours. So yeah, I'm trying to bring some like minded folks on, or just some creative minds that know what they're talking about and can talk Sixers. And so that's what we're going to do. What's going on, guys? How's it going?
Yeah, good to get a win there. Good to chat it up. I feel like this was a good bounce back after Monday. This is one that they should win, but this Magic team is pretty pesky and kind of brings a little something, gives the team trouble. So stuff that we can get some takeaways from for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to be here, man. Nice to get after it after a game here, and a good win after a pretty disappointing one on Monday. So ready to get into it.
Yeah, for sure, man. Again, man, thanks for coming, guys. Everybody in the chat, be active in the chat. Throw comments out there. Throw concerns. Hit the like button for us. Push us through the YouTube algorithm. So initial takeaways. We'll just go around and give some initial takeaways, and then we'll get into the conversations, man. So the Sixers win 105-94 on their second game against the Orlando Magic in 3 nights after Monday. And I started calling it the hangover game. The Eagles won the NFC Championship game on Sunday night. James Harden, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey are seen in a photo with Lil Baby and Meek Mill and Kevin Hart and everybody. And then they come out on Monday and they were up by 20, but they got ran out of the building in the second half by the Orlando Magic, which tells me they got tired really quickly, which tells me they're hungover. And when you're 35 years old, your hangovers are a little bit different than when you're 25 years old, James Harden. And so that's what happened on Monday for me. So, yeah, I think maybe they got 2 days of rest and they looked a lot more energized, and they looked like they kept the energy going throughout the game and closed it out in the fourth quarter. So we're going to completely forget about the hangover game. It didn't happen. It doesn't count. I'll give them and I get mad about stuff like that because I always say, like, these guys are making how much money, and they come out here and look lackluster, look like they're not giving effort. But since the Eagles won the NFC Championship game and are in the Super Bowl, I will give everybody a pass for the hangover game. So this game to me looked a lot more like what it should look like against the Orlando Magic. Again, I know everybody wants a blowout. I know when people think Orlando Magic, they think tanking team and they should be nowhere close and this should not be competitive at all. But really, it's just a difficult matchup for the Sixers. They're a difficult matchup for kind of everybody. They've beat some good teams this year. They beat the Boston Celtics 3 times this year. They have 8 guys over 6'9" on the roster, and the Sixers have one guy over 6'9" on the roster. That's Joel Embiid. So it is a matchup nightmare. We survived it. Big game from James Harden, which was nice too, because when a team's strategy is to throw the kitchen sink at Joel Embiid for his whole career, not just this game or not just this season, he needs a guard on the perimeter that can make the other team pay for doing that. So great to have a big game from James Harden. And yeah, we'll talk about everything. We'll talk about Maxey. We'll talk about everything. Sean, what you think, man? What's your initial takeaway from the victory tonight over the Orlando Magic?
Yeah, I mean, at first I thought we were heading down the same path of they got up early in the first quarter. The Magic started to claw back into it. It was looking like a game. That second quarter, they came out swinging. I think it was 30-19. The Magic outscored them in that second quarter. It felt good to have James Harden kind of drive us home game. It's been nice to kind of see that of late of him just knocking down those step back threes. He's up to 39.4% from three on the year, which is exactly what we need. And you can't ask for much more than that. It's also I think it's becoming just crystal clear that the backup center spot is not remotely postseason ready. And Montrezl Harrell back-to-back games where I would say it's probably his worst performance of the year. And brutal from Doc Rivers to see that out of the whole game Monday. He gave Paul Reed a quick 3 minutes of run in the first half and then to go back to Montrezl Harrell in the second half. So that was rough to see. Like you mentioned with the size difference, this is just not a matchup for Trez. It's not that there are really any matchups for Trez, but this one specifically with the amount of length and athleticism is brutal for him, and it showed. So that was a big takeaway for me. It's just the backup center spot is not ready, and we're kind of running in that same circle of trying to figure out how to survive when Joel Embiid is not on the court.
Yeah, I think mirror a lot of that with the Magic specifically. They do a lot with similar problems that they bring up as the Raptors with the Sixers. They got a lot of length, a lot of size at different positions, wing and forwards. So they do cause a lot of problems. They just throw three guys at Embiid and make somebody else beat them. On Monday night, nobody could beat them. You got a really good game out of Hardin tonight, spacing the floor, attacking the mismatches when he got them. And when you're looking at down the line, he was 6 of 10 from three. Games like that from Harden, you can't take for granted him being able to do that, especially late when Embiid didn't have to play much of the fourth quarter because Harden took over. It's really nice to see that. But I texted Sean a few times during the game just saying, Trez has got to go, man. There's got to be another answer. I think that's the biggest thing I took away from tonight is that there just has to be a guy that can play defense and protect the rim. They're really missing that, especially in the second unit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like, and I've heard before that Doc doesn't look at analytics, and part of the reason they had all the disagreements in Boston with Danny Ainge, and then they eventually traded him, which is still hilarious to me. He got traded. They were like, if we can get a first round pick for this guy, he's out of here, and he just doesn't. He's not going to look at a plus minus. He's not going to look at really anything. But I don't even think you have to look at analytics to see what's going on with that. It's wild to me that putting Trez out there, not just Montrez out there against a team like this with length, Montrez and George Niang at the same time a lot is just really asking for a layup line. And that's what happens most of the time. I mean, I saw situations where Niang was trying to guard Paolo Banchero one-on-one, and he was like shooting over chairs in a gym, man. He was like, oh, cool, wide open mid-range jumper. Here we go, wide open mid-range jumper. So, yeah, the backup center position is still the biggest thing for me. I mean, what do you guys think it is with Doc? Does he have some kind of obligation to Montrezl Harrell? But I guess, like, I asked that question, and then I look at last year, he did the same thing with DeAndre Jordan and Paul Millsap. I don't know. Which is it? Does he love these guys or does he absolutely hate Paul Reed? I saw Paul Reed get called for a moving screen, and I said, that's it. He's going to get benched for the next 6 months, and he didn't come back in the game. What do you think it is?
Yeah, I do think it's a little bit of the obligation thing. I think like these are the Doc's guys that obviously he's got the history with Trez from his time with the Clippers. There's the Houston connections. There's plenty of things connecting Montrez to this current Sixers organization. So I think there is a little bit of that selling point of like when they come here, like we have a role for you, but you just got to be able to like look at it with your eyes and identify. And when a guy just doesn't have it, you have to just have the guts to pull in. And I don't think Paul Reed is like a finished product, or I'm sick of banging the Paul Reed table because it's just not going to happen. It's very clear that like Doc's mind is made up on this, but just like you just got to have either whether it's the guts or the brains or whatever it is to kind of figure it out that this isn't working. You can't try something else. And I think the second half, seeing him go back to Montrez, which again, kind of as expected, but that was especially infuriating for me to just kind of like, the evidence is right there in front of me and you just continue to run for it. So it is kind of the same thing with DeAndre Jordan. And it should spell out to Daryl Morey that he has to bring someone else in here.
Yeah, It seems like he waits for Paul Reed to make the mistake. He's almost looking for it. When he goes into the game, he's waiting for him to do something that warrants him to be pulled out of the game. And I don't know the loyalty, what it is with these older guys. I think Doc has some sort of affinity with the aging big, the aging backup big, and they've been able to fill that role for him. So I think it's almost partly Daryl Morey's fault as well that they kind of oblige when Doc Rivers is looking for that aging backup center position. So I don't really know what it is. I think it at this point is the biggest issue coming into the trade deadline as we're about a week away. So they definitely have some options here, and I'm really hoping that they pull the trigger on one of these moves because I really think that 8 to 10 to 12 minutes of Montrezl Harrell in a playoff game can actually lose you the game, and we're gonna run into that problem because we've seen it time and time again with this team.
Yeah, either that or Embiid's gonna have to play like 44 minutes in playoff games because when it does happen, it seems like the only option then is like to get Embiid back in the game right away. And it happened in the first half in this game, and right when Embiid came back in, he took the ball, he went right to the rim. He's like this, we were up by 15, and Orlando went on a 12-2 run, and then it was suddenly a 5-point game or a 3-point game, and then Embiid came back in and try to keep us alive. It's like he has a Superman cape on, and as soon as he walks off the floor, everything falls apart, and he has to come back in and save it. It's frustrating, but again, it is the matchup thing against Denver. He did the same thing with Montrez, and I don't know if I don't know. I don't think I really watched Montrez intently against Denver, but it didn't seem like we fell apart as much when Embiid went off the floor against Denver. Do you guys think that's just like what the matchup is? Like Denver doesn't have 9, 6'11" dudes out there.
Yeah, I mean, it was Zeke Nanji or Nanji, however you say his last name, was their primary backup that they're rolling with, who just frankly isn't that good. They also have DeAndre Jordan, and I think it should kind of be telling that he is not clocking any minutes for the Nuggets over there, even though he was signed a second into free agency this year, which was even nuttier. But I don't think Denver is that much of like a threat from a backup big man. And I mean, Trez has never been known for his defense and looks like he's lost some explosiveness. So when you combine that with the fact that he's 6'7" and somehow playing center in today's NBA, there's just like not a lot there to work with from a defensive aspect. So there's like spots where you can hide him when there's really not that like attacking threat, because there are very few big men that are true like offensive threats in today's NBA. Their primary grunt guys protect the rim, get putbacks, get rebounds. There's just not a lot of true offensive centers, but there's also like very average looking guys that Montrez can make look like terrific offensive threats. So you got to be careful how you hide them, and like the spark and the intensity, which I do like out of Montrez. Like the things that I guess we were looking for offensively from him are such basic basketball skills, as far as like being a roll man, dunking when there's no one around you, catching lobs, which he really can't do at this point in his career. He is no longer a lob threat, which was a big part of his offensive repertoire. Like James Harden can make just about any big man look good in the Montrezl Harrell role, that I don't think he's differentiating enough offensively. Like his self-creation ability really is not really there anymore. And I think those kind of signs of offensive upside, that being gone paired with like the defense never really being there, it's just not a plus NBA player anymore. So you can kind of hide him at times, but at the end of the day, he is who he is.
Yeah, I know you guys mentioned a little bit earlier the lineups with Niang and Harrell in there, and when you're looking at a front court of two guys that can't get up and down the floor, and haven't seen a lot of those guys dunking a little bit either, it's like the transition defense is so notably bad throughout this game, and it's something that has been plaguing the Sixers throughout this season, but specifically here, like Montrez just wasn't getting back. He's not really punishing on the offensive boards like he has been before, and then he's not getting back on defense. And with a team like this that's just hungry and going out there with something to prove every single night, he gets run off the floor, and it just gets worse every night when you see it. And teams that have the length and the size, the youth and the athleticism, they just make him look even worse than he has in previous games. So I don't know that there's an answer on this team, and that's why I'm looking ahead to the guys that are available. I know Sean and I talked about it a lot yesterday, but like even I'm looking in the comments and seeing a lot of names that I still don't like too much. I need a guy that's athletic, that can rim run, and that can protect the rim. And I feel like if you can check those three boxes, you can fit with James Harden in an offense. So I think that there's a lot of guys out there that match that. So we'll see how it goes over the next coming days and weeks.
Yeah, and for people that are going to watch this or listen to it and just say, like, we won the game, why are you guys being so negative? We're really the whole season, we're always looking towards what do we think this team's going to look like in the playoffs against the best teams. We know you can win 50, 55, maybe 60 games in an NBA schedule if you play the Charlotte Hornets, the Orlando Magic, the Houston Rockets. How many good matchups do you really get against juggernauts with all of their players on the floor? The Boston Celtics, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Denver Nuggets. We've played up to teams like that, which I think is a great sign when you look at what we could possibly look like in the playoffs. And then you just play these tough matchups of teams like this that aren't like half court savvy teams, aren't like experienced playoff teams, but are just young, athletic, and are going to rebound and are going to run. So that's where I'm at with it. But so we're focused on, I think, what we think is the one major weakness of this team. That's why we sound negative. We're just looking at, like, we know we're a strong team, but there's this one glaring weakness that I think we have to take care of. It's the Doc Rivers Daryl Morey dynamic is just so interesting to me because I feel like Daryl Morey drafted some guys that he thought could possibly fill that role, and one's gone, the other one's basically gone. So now it's like, do you think these guys are on the same page? You know what I mean? I often wonder, like, what the communication is like, or do you think Daryl's doing his job? Like, I have to get a guy that I know Doc is going to play, so I got to find a vet. That's probably why he signed Montrezl Harrell. He knew he didn't trust Paul Reed, and the Montrezl Harrell thing, he has his moments where it looks like, oh, look, Trez still has something left. But realistically, like, in the grand scheme of things, he just, I mean, Seth Curry was doing layups over this guy. Like, he can't defend anybody in the NBA. And we just have to, we have to accept that. Doc's not going to accept that. So do you think Daryl's doing his job? Like, now I got to go get a guy that I think can fix this issue, or Doc's going to keep playing Montrezl Harrell and we have no other options?
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of that, like, balancing act. Like, even looking back at this summer, there was a part of me that kind of, Montrez was obviously like a pretty late addition to this team. There was a part of me that wondered if he was going to have the roster come in with just Charles Bassey and Paul Reed as the two big men to basically, like, force Doc to play them. And, like, you don't have an out here. Like, these are our guys. And obviously we know how things turned. That Montrez came in, Charles Bassey went out, and Trez, who has the connection with Daryl Morey too. I would like a little bit of outside the box thinking here. Maybe a guy that, neither one of you have experience with. Like, let's try one of these, like, 350 other players that neither of you guys have worked with before. But either way, if they're going to kind of recycle from that same farm, and it's tough because you obviously want to have the trust in your coach to just bring in, like, the top tools and, like, have him juice the best out of it. But if you kind of have, like, setting it up for mindset, it's just not quite the same shakedown. And I also think there's a change up in, like, Daryl Morey has been pretty open about kind of diminishing the value of a backup center a little bit. Like, he's talked about how, like, they're only going to play limited minutes in that. The difference between that on this Sixers team and just a general NBA team is you're backing up Joel Embiid. So you're backing up the guy who, when steps off the court, is the most important player on both sides of the court. So it's not like you're replacing, like, just a normal, like, guy that rim runs, sets screens, and gets rebounds. It's like you're replacing the guy that does everything. And I get a lot of that is also on James Harden to, like, step up, run a second unit and everything like that. But there's just bigger shoes to fill. And that, like, needs to be kept in mind when looking at, like, what guys you're seeking out.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Morey has done. I think it's a little bit twofold. Like, I think he definitely has to think about the factor of, is Doc Rivers going to be favorable to this guy? Is he going to want to play him? Is it worth moving assets to then gain that guy and him not get minutes? Has to be a factor to some degree with Morey, but I don't know. It is such a marginal position when you're looking at the minutes that they will play in the big games, the games that matter the most. But I think as Sixers fans, this has just been a recurring theme over the last 5 years, the entire time of this contention, since the beginning. Like, we talked about Greg Monroe yesterday, and thinking about back to that Raptors series and how that series was essentially dictated by the fact that they didn't have a reliable backup center. And then you move forward and you just look down the line, whether it's Dwight Howard, and just different teams have had this same problem, and it's become so frustrating because there's no answer. DeAndre Jordan is not the type of guy that can play in the playoffs. Montrezl Harrell, we've mentioned it a handful of times. It has basically got Doc Rivers fired in LA for not being able to play in the playoffs. So it's not that I'm, super down on this team by any means. Actually, I think we're at probably the best point that we've been all season. But when you're looking at this and the potential and the outlook of this season, you're going to be looking at a deep playoff run, hopefully again. And hopefully when you're doing that, it becomes more important to have a significant backup center that can play those minutes and not just drop off. Really, you're not asking them to do too much. You're just not asking them to get run off the court. And unfortunately, I think we're in a situation where your backup center looks like he might get run off the court again.
Yeah, so since we're here, let's just go here while we're here. In the Ben Simmons trade, the Sixers were kind of had their hands tied and had to give up the backup center that was probably the best backup center of Joel Embiid's career. I think definitely the best backup center of Joel Embiid's career.
Yeah.
And he went to Brooklyn and ended up not getting much run, or Nick Claxton kind of took the job from him, and then he ends up in Chicago, and he's not getting much run there. I think they go small ball when Vucevic is off the floor. Just maybe a weird fit, but when you really look at his per 36 numbers, he's still rebounding the ball at an insane rate. He still has a couple of games where he has like 12 points and 10 rebounds in 15 minutes off the bench. So what do you guys think about the potential Andre Drummond trade? He's making 3.5 million, and then he has a player option. And we have guys that are making more than that don't get a single minute in an NBA game. For Furkan Korkmaz, Jaden Springer, even Paul Reed's making like 1.5 or something. I don't know. You could work it out some way with the money. A lot of people are saying he's washed, he's done. Andre Drummond's not the same that he was when he was here. Forget about it. I'd like to get your guys' opinion on Andre Drummond right now, and whether you think that's like a possibility at the trade deadline.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I'm the biggest Andre Drummond guy. There's a part of me that like I'm cool with remembering him fondly, but I do think he's better than Montrezl Harrell, and I think he's more playable than that. And he's also, when we talk about this balancing act, he's a guy that I do believe Doc Rivers would be willing to play over Montrezl Harrell, which I think is a key factor. He's got that relationship with Andre Drummond. He liked him when he was here. There was good feelings all around. So it's still an upgrade in my mind, and one of the more like available options out of kind of the players out there. The Bulls seem pretty for the taking right now, and Drummond is certainly on that list. So I would view it as an upgrade, and I think it's worth doing. But I also like he was in that brief Nets playoffs last year that he played in. He was not good. He could not guard in space, and there were some issues. So for me, it wouldn't be the cure all, but I would still take it as like, I guess, a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the same vein as Sean there. I think it depends on how, like, again, how much you really do value that backup center position. I think if it's something you want to upgrade but not have to spend too much on, Andre Drummond is a fair replacement. He definitely is better than Montrez at this point. He does a lot of things at least a little bit better. I think offensively he'll do a better job with the pick and rolls. Like you said, he's a great rebounder. He's going to play good defense. He always is going to end up doing a little bit too much at times, trying to make no look or behind the back passes, but like kind of part of his charm to a degree. But I don't know. I like Drummond. I think when you're thinking about him as a locker room guy, he seemed very well liked, surprisingly very well liked by the city and the fans here. So definitely not a bad option, but I don't know if he's my number one at this point.
Yeah, so do you guys want to go out there? Do you guys want to go there? Just throw out a name or two that you think maybe at the trade deadline, because I don't think there's many options really. I think I've read enough articles probably, and I probably could name if maybe there's some that you guys are thinking of that I haven't thought of or haven't read about. But yeah, go ahead and throw some names out at the trade deadline who you think would be available and would be realistic that could help this team with their their lack at backup center, or maybe if you feel like there's a weakness at the wing position, wing off the bench, something like that. What are the names you guys are thinking?
Yeah, my dream backup center for this team would be Mo Bamba off the Magic. Just keep him in town right here. He's got that Drew Hanlon connections worked out with Embiid. Got a little bit of a relationship there. He can shoot the three. He's actually a pretty good perimeter shooter. He's got like a 7'7" wingspan, can block shots, good rebounder. Still pretty young, and he's pretty much fallen out of the rotation for the Magic. I don't think he stepped on the court at all tonight. I don't think these past two games. But I don't know if there's anything really that entices the Magic that makes that difficult. Maybe they have some fascination with Jaden Springer, or we can code it up somehow and make the money work. He's got like a $9-point-something million cap hit, so you got to kind of finesse some stuff there. So that's kind of my dream, unrealistic. I think Jackson Hayes is another name that kind of jumps out to me. He's also kind of fallen out of the rotation from the Pelicans. That to me would be an intriguing name. And Isaiah Hartenstein is another one off the Knicks who I could see making a positive impact, and it's just kind of one of those more normal players. So those are three that I would jump at. James, you want to toss out a couple more?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to kind of go in that same vein. When you're thinking about high end, the number one guy to be looking at, I feel like it'd probably be Nas Reed. When you're thinking about the role that Montrezl Harrell was like potentially going to play as an energy guy, kind of up and down high roller, he is that kind of player, and I think he'd fit really nicely alongside James Harden. I think that there's a little bit too much fascination with him around the league. I think that he's going to draw a lot more attention come this trade deadline, just because he's not getting very much run in Minnesota with the logjam at center and big there. But he definitely deserves a lot more minutes with him. Kind of turning the page towards like a wing area. Kenrich Williams is a guy that I really like. I'm not sure if OKC is ready to part with him, as he's played a pretty good role there, but super switchable, athletic, smart defender that can space the floor. A guy that does a little bit of what a Niang type ish role with a much better defensive player that can switch and play on 3, 4s, and 5s. So he's a guy that could potentially replace in that a smallish ball 5, but play that 4, 3, and 4 area as well. So I don't know what their plan is exactly, but if they were going to go wing rather than center at a bigger upgrade, I think Kenrich Williams is the direction I would go.
Nice, yeah, yeah. I like those names. We'll see what they do. There's been rumors kind of on both sides. There's rumors, one today, Jason Dumas saying the Sixers are not planning on a significant upgrade, but are looking at backup center, wing, and backup point guard. And I'm like, I mean, like, isn't that a significant upgrade? The tweet was like, basically, the Sixers aren't going to do anything, but they're looking for these 3 things. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, you know how Daryl Morey is. There's not going to be a single leaked anything information. So it'll just happen when it happens, and we'll see. He's probably working on something. There was a rumor too that they tried to trade Matisse Thybulle last year before the draft. I don't really want to see Matisse Thybulle go. I think he has potential. I think he needs a little bit more playing time, but I think with the right lineups, he's not shooting the ball terribly this year. He shoots the ball better with James Harden, as everybody does. His defense is just otherworldly. It's like ridiculous, his perimeter defense, and I think he's gotten also very good at playing that perimeter defense at a high level without fouls, without jumping over people's backs and things like that. I think he's gotten a lot more discipline on the perimeter too. I don't think we'll see Thybulle in a trade, but what do you guys think? Do you think you'll see Thybulle in a trade? And if not, do you think, because I don't know, like, I love him, but is Doc even gonna really give him enough minutes for his value to be worth it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's kind of where I sit on it, is like you have to give to get something, and like we're pretty limited with assets as it is, and I feel like his role is so like just variable in this offense, in this rotation. Like there's nights where he's provided a significant lift and played like even 20 plus minutes, and the Sixers have benefited from on court. And then there's plenty of nights where he either barely touches the floor or doesn't touch the floor at all. And for that kind of like him clearly not being like a locked in guy, I think it almost makes him expendable in a trade sense, just based on like he's not a lock for a guy. He's not one of Doc guys for sure. And I think in the playoffs, like we've seen some issues from him. To Matisse's credit, I do think he's taken some real steps in the right direction from a shooting perspective. He does not look as timid to shoot the ball. He's shown a little bit offensive, which is huge for his outlook. And he's also a restricted free agent at the end of the year. So I think a lot of probably the Sixers mindset with that depends on what those behind closed doors conversations have been about his future, about the contract. If they don't think he has any intentions of re-signing, or if you think he's going to seek something on the open market that they aren't going to match, I do think it makes sense to move on from him. But I'm not in a rush to get rid of him, especially based on kind of the lack of wings that we do have.
Yeah, I totally agree with Thibaud. It's in an interesting situation with him because he kind of is the one player that matches the fit of guy that you're trying to bring in, right? Like he is a very good perimeter defender, and he's one of the few off the bench that you have that is capable of playing. Like Daniel House is clearly not in the rotation anymore, and he's a contract you probably want to move on from as soon as you can. But with Thibaud, he actually ends up being the only like movable piece alongside Korkmaz or House, but he's the only one of those 3 with any value. You see him getting there's been reports from him coming from Sacramento or Golden State and other teams. Chicago has drawn interest. for Thibaud. So I think if you are looking at making a significant move or even, a notable one in this trade deadline, I fear it is Thibaud that will be the one to go, just because you don't have that many other players on this team that have movable contracts that are worth moving on from, because you're not going to get much else. Like, you're not getting a good player back for Daniel House or Furkan Korkmaz. Those guys are DNPs, coaches' decisions every single night. So there's not much value with them. So I think Thibault's the only one that would make a reasonable return in a trade. So I think if they do upgrade significantly anywhere, Thibault will probably be the one to go. Although I've always been a fan. We've all had our ups and downs with him, I think, but he has been playing pretty well. And the analytics, I know we're kind of anti analytics here, but he does show some good numbers on and off splits, and with Embiid, he's done a really good job. So I don't know, I could see it both ways.
Yeah, for sure. Again, man, if it happens, it happens. I just think if you move Thibault, I do think he has, at his age and his defensive potential, he does have a lot of value, and I would be bummed if it's not for a significant upgrade. That's all, you know what I mean? But we'll
Yeah.
see what Daryl's got up his sleeve, man. So James Harden in his game, again after the hangover game on Monday, where clearly in the second half he lost all of his steam. I think Harden struggles with teams like this, the Orlando Magic, the same way he struggled in the playoffs last year with the Toronto Raptors. Guys that are 6'11", that can switch everything. They can really eliminate the pick and roll. They can really, there's points where he's ISOing 7'5" Bol. You know what I mean? It's just so many weird matchups for Harden, and he struggles with that. But in this game, I was saying in the first half, here's I thought he was struggling a little bit with them switching on all the screens, and he kind of runs out of options. But the second half, he really came around. He had 16 points in the second half. He was 4 for 6 from 3 in the second half, which is massive, especially, again, when a team's trying to do everything they can to stop Joel Embiid. That's the dynamic that Joel Embiid's missed his whole career, is another guy. Joel has gotten so much scrutiny, and he's not free from all scrutiny. He definitely has games where like, what the hell are you doing? Or come on, like, where's the effort? But for the most part, in the biggest games in the playoffs, like you go back to the Toronto Raptors game where they held him to like 1 point, and this guy was trying to play with a point guard that was not a threat from the perimeter for 5 years. So he finally has James Harden. He finally has not a superstar anymore, but he's on an MVP list. He's still an elite facilitator. And if his three-point shot, he's shooting a three better than he has since 2011 right now. So that's just massive to go from a guy that is terrified to even take a shot to a guy that is one of the best facilitators, one of the best passers I've ever seen, and is a 40% three-point shooter right now. So I just think Joel finally has that guy, and if James can keep this level of play going, this is really all you need from James Harden, in my opinion. The 25-point triple-double. And in the fourth quarter, when things get tight and they start throwing the kitchen sink at Joel Embiid, you know what I mean? We need you to do something. We need you to step up and make something happen. And he did it tonight. 16 points in the second half, 4 for 6 from 3. So James Harden, keep doing what you're doing, man. What do you guys think about James in this game?
Yeah, it was awesome. He's kind of just been that guy this year, and a huge step forward for me that I've seen is him looking more comfortable off the catch and shoot. That's a huge deal for a guy that has actively run away from it at points, and even last season after coming to the Sixers, looked super uncomfortable whenever the opportunity came. Like, he just is more natural off his step back, which obviously is patented move, but that hasn't fully been the case. He knocked down 2 catch and shoot ones tonight. He's willing, and especially when teams are going to throw the house at Embiid, those looks are there. And if Harden can capitalize on them, that's massive. And so much of his game, we talked about this, James, a lot, but it's like, it feels like it's either a good or a bad game for Harden, depending on whether those 3-pointers go in. And tonight, like, he was 6 for 10. It was awesome. It was a weird game for Harden because he had the 7 turnovers, but he had, I think, none in the fourth quarter. Definitely none in the fourth quarter. So he kind of cut it out in crunch time. And I'm also going to kind of take that just based on, like, a lot of them were him trying like the high risk kind of deep outlet passes, which are basically how his version of kind of picking up the pace. Like, he's never going to be a super pacey guy, but he can just kind of have that outlet pass that opens things up. And when it works, it's super effective and big time. So I'll take him going out shooting. And I've been very happy with the version of James Harden that we've seen this year. And if this continues in the postseason, I think the Sixers are in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I've absolutely been loving what I've seen from Harden this year. It's really nice to root for him when he's playing like this. It's a lot of fun. I feel like we haven't had that guard that's been able to do this. Obviously, Maxey to a different level, but Harden's an all-star this year, man. He's almost 8 attempts per game, and he's shooting nearly 40% from three. Uh, it's it's lovely to watch because we just haven't had that presence before, and even later in the year last year, we had glimpses of it. Even into the playoffs with the Heat game where he went off in the fourth quarter and he had those type of runs. It's been pretty consistent this year where when the Heat is on Joel, when they're double or triple teaming Joel, he's been able to really take over. When the game is basically handed over to him, he's been able to handle it really well himself. So, you know, as a facilitator, you see him basically control the game and the pace of the game in the first half, and then seeing in the second half him being able to take over and make tough shots, and him expanding the repertoire from almost exclusively off the dribble threes to Sean. You pointed out multiple catch and shoot tonight, which is essential to him kind of fitting into the offense as a scorer, averaging over 11 assists per game. I've just been super happy to see what he's been able to do this year. And when we talked about how disrespected Joel Embiid has been over his career the last couple years as a superstar. James Harden fits in that category just as well. And so it's really nice to see them kind of both find that bond there, and they've been really playing well off of each other. So just really nice to watch, and another great game from Harden tonight where he was able to finish it off with a couple of threes late in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, the catch and shoot is huge, man. I remember so many times last season, it was like he played for 10 straight years where he was just the guy with the ball in his hands, and then all of a sudden he has to, play an offense that's centered around Joel Embiid and kicking it out and swinging it, and so many times you would see him catch the ball on an open three and just, like, hesitate and take a dribble, like, he didn't know how to play like that, like, "What do I do in this situation?" So, yeah, I definitely have to give him credit, not just doing what he did this offseason, with finally having a full off season of workouts and getting in the shape that he got in. He just has so much more bounce and elevation on his jump shot this season. The burst to the rim, finishing at the rim. But I definitely think he really worked on catching and shooting
Yeah.
this off season. There was a couple possessions tonight, like the ones that you said, that really shot clock running down, everything's going haywire, like somebody, what's happening, and Harden just catches the ball out there and bails us out. So it's definitely nice to have him be able to do that. Also, I think he, in the past couple of seasons since the Trae Young / James Harden rule change in the NBA, he's just not getting love from officials at all anymore. And not only is he not getting the ones that he clearly forces and leans in and hooks the arm and throws his arms up, there's a lot of fouls that he's just not getting at all. And there's games where he gets frustrated. And, last Monday night, there was one where he drove in, missed a layup, laid out of bounds, and the Magic got a three on the other end because they were playing 4-on-5. And I was so mad at James Harden during that little situation. But I think tonight he put his head down and said, like, I got to put the ball in a hoop. You know what I mean? Whether the officials give me the call or not, I got to put the ball in a hoop. I didn't really see him doing too much like flopping and yelling at officials. A couple times he did, but maybe the Magic overshadowed it for me because, good Lord, those dudes. I know people on the outside are going to say, wow, a Sixers fan calling someone else a flop artist, but what did I just watch?
Yeah.
Dude, the Wagner brothers, Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony, like these guys were flopping all over the court, just flailing, screaming. I thought it was embarrassing, honestly, for him at certain points. Even Banchero on a situation where he missed a layup over Embiid, and then he flopped on the layup. Then Embiid got the rebound, and he flopped again on the rebound. I'm like, what are these dudes doing? So maybe they overshadowed it. Maybe they took away the flopping from Harden and Embiid. But I definitely think Harden was more locked in and trying to put the ball in a hoop tonight versus, kind of trying to rely on a foul call.
Yeah, and both Harden and Embiid kind of have that tendency to, when things are going bad, to uh, overexert themselves trying to get a call. And for Harden, I was way worse last year for me. Like, I think when he didn't have that kind of lift off or burst when attacking the rim, he would kind of result to just kind of like throwing himself at a guy's chest and hoping for a call. And there hasn't been as much of that. There's been him creating like legitimate separation and being able to get a shot off at the rim. And as a result, that's occurring, just obviously points from him scoring that way and just real fouls coming his way when he's not kind of seeking it out as much. Like, they naturally come when you drive to the basket. That's how things work in the game of basketball, is when guys can't stop you, they foul you. And that's how it is. And that's kind of like the cycles come back to James Harden in the proper way that way. So at their worst, there's definitely a ton of like laying on the ground behind the play for both Embiid and Harden. But tonight, I didn't think it was bad. And when they're both locked in, it works out. So as long as that stays out, and the better the vibes are, I think the greater chance of that. So hopefully they're up and on their feet as much as possible.
Yeah. Harden, I feel like when it's a bad Harden game, it's when the reaching for fouls or looking for foul calls is the pinnacle of his offense. Like when that's an addition, when it's a supplement, when he's able to draw fouls, because he's very skilled at it. Like, I think people kind of they discredit getting fouled because it seems like a cop out, when really it's a skill. When Harden is using that as the supplement or the secondary portion of his drives to the basket, or he's really good at drawing the fouls on the 3-point shots too. Sometimes it might be an offensive foul, but he drags the arm, he moves the
Got
feet.
Bankero
It's
tonight.
yeah, it's tactical. It's intentional. And when he's able to do that as, the additional part to his offense, it's when it becomes an advantage. But when he's looking for that, and he's trying to start his offense up by going for the fouls or getting to the free throw line, I think is where they both get in trouble, him and Embiid. Because when you don't get it, then you just get pissed and you try to, figure something else out or yell at the ref and convince them. But yeah, tonight is a night where both of them, Embiid right away too, a lot of like just straight drop steps into Mo Wagner's chest and Wendell Carter. And both of those guys are looking to yell or, draw an offensive foul or do something crazy, when Embiid is just better than them, and Harden at times is just better than Gary Harris or Jalen Suggs, whoever's guarding him on the perimeter. So I think tonight it was just more of, put your head down. You guys are better than them. Get to the rim at your ease, because it's going to be easy at times. So it's really nice. It's just so much more fun to watch them both when they're attacking the rim and then getting the fouls as a result of that, rather than looking for the fouls to begin with.
Yeah, man, absolutely on the money. I think that's one thing that also frustrated me on Monday. Was you guys are just better than them, and Joel Embiid, especially on Monday. I know he put up 30 points, I think, but that's what did it 25? Did he have 30? I don't remember, but
He got
um,
30.
did he have 30?
I think
Yeah, and
so.
that's
Yeah.
it's such a blessing to have a player that can drop 30, and I hate what he did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but within the game, there was so many times, yeah, where they're, you know, looking at the refs and things like that, when it's really like, dude, it's Wendell Carter Jr. It's Franz Wagner, just get down there and put the ball in the hoop. And tonight, Joel Embiid, a lot of times, especially in the first half, until Magic really started to try to get creative and run some kind of zones or some like double teams from the backside and front him and all kinds of things like that in the second half. In the first half, he was just, I mean, like I said, I think I said just hit square. You know what I mean? Like on 2K, like, dude, just get him in the right position and literally hit square. Your shoulder will just move him out of the way, and it's an automatic bucket. And he did it against Wagner a couple of times. He did it against uh now I forget his name, but
Carter.
Carter Jr. Yeah. He did it against those guys in one-on-one situations. If he's in the right spot, I mean, I grew up watching, Shaquille O'Neal and players like that. It's not as forceful as Shaquille O'Neal. Obviously, it's probably the biggest shoulder that ever existed. But a drop step was so totally impossible, and the player would like fly into the first row, and it wasn't a foul because he's turning to the basket. And people always wanted an offensive foul, but Joel needs to play more like that against guys like this that clearly, can't guard you until you get into the playoffs against teams that, the Boston Celtics, that are going to have guys that can strategically defend you and have size and things like that. But when you're playing against these guys, man, just get in the paint and do a drop step. And he did that tonight. And Wagner, man, I just don't think I've hated an NBA player as much. And I haven't watched the Wagner brothers play intently. I think this is the first time I really just watched them play. Oh my goodness, this guy's like screaming before Joel even makes the move.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice when Joel we just kind of see that version of him, because we've seen his progression into kind of like this wing in a center's body is basically the way he plays. But there's times where it's nice where he remembers, like, wait a minute, I'm 7'2" and 285 pounds. Like, I can put a guy into the stanchion if I want to, and he does, and he can do it. And it's also like you see the versatility in it, like flashback to that Nuggets game, and he really did pretty much none of the post work. It was all taking Jokic on an island, taking one-on-one, dropping the jump shots over him, because that's one of the rare big men that can kind of look him in the eye, and he can't really move in the same way. And then look at him when he has that undersized matchup where he can still capitalize on it. So that is what makes Joel special, is he has those layers to him. He can do a little bit of everything. And I do love it when he just kind of has that, like, I'm so much bigger than you. I can do whatever I want, and I'm going to go get to the basket. There's nothing you can do about it. And there was a lot of that tonight, more so than we've really seen for pretty much most of this season. So it was awesome. I like those flashbacks.
Yeah, for him and Harden both, I think it was kind of just getting back to basics tonight, like kind of what I pointed out originally. It's just what they do instead of trying to make it more complicated than it has to be. When they can, obviously the Magic are throwing different sets and different coverages at Joel and trying to make life hard on him, but they move the ball quick enough, get the ball back to Embiid in an advantageous space. There's really no one in the world that can guard him, let alone a Mo Wagner or a Wendell Carter Jr. or a Mo Bamba. Like, those guys really don't have a chance, especially when they're on an island, the rare chances that they are on an island. So it was nice to see him just kind of take advantage of that when it was there. And then there's other times I really like that the play when he starts on the wing and gets that head start, catches it downhill, and there's no one that can get in front of him and make a play. And a lot of times he does get fouled and doesn't get the call, but going strong to the rim, him attacking the basket, smart, high IQ in those spaces, because sometimes you can get a little out of hand and run through charges and things of that nature. But getting back to basics tonight, Joel, even though it was a pretty light night for him, 28, which is crazy to say is a light night for him, but didn't have to play a lot of the fourth quarter, which is nice. They were able to get ahead with him off the court, but still just a really super solid night from him all around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, totally. I want to get your guys' opinion on Tyrese Maxey, because I've been going back and forth. Tonight he was 2 for 11 for 10 points off the bench. He did get to the free throw. He got 6 free throws. He was 5 for 6 from the free throw line, 2 assists. I've been going back and forth ever since he moved back to the bench, because part of me feels like maybe we jumped the gun a little bit. I just think, but then he's had great games off the bench too. So it has to do with matchups. Probably has to do with where Doc puts him, what the lineup is, and who the lineup is against on the other team. But in the beginning of the season, he was having a great season, starting alongside Joel Embiid and James Harden until he got that injury. And last year, the first couple of games when James Harden got here, Tyrese Maxey's game took off, and he's finishing the game, obviously, with the starters. So I'm not sure about him coming off the bench. I know we want the Anthony Melton's defense, and Tyrese Maxey, I guess the idea, or I know the idea, is that he's going to come off the bench and kind of have his own time where he can create the offense and be the main scorer, the main offensive weapon. He's been just struggling lately. Again, he had 32 he had 32 off the bench against the Kings, and he had 27 off the bench against the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
But kind of since then, he's been really struggling off the bench. Tonight, he just looked very passive. He just didn't look aggressive at all. There was one three-pointer that it was a 2 for 1, I think, at the end of the second quarter, so I get it. But it seems like the threes that he was taking, he was just kind of rushing, or just like, okay, I'm going to get one right here. And you can kind of tell when he wants to force a shot, I feel like. There was corner threes that he got. He missed a couple of them. I think he hit one that put us up 10 in the fourth quarter, which was awesome. Like for him to be a part of a statement shot that stretched the lead in the fourth quarter against this team that can make runs against us was good. So, but he's been struggling, man, off the bench. And I guess people's big question right now is what's up with Tyrese Maxey? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this as well. First off, there's like a couple things going on. The first thing is a little bit of him just coming back to reality. Like, he started the year, he ended last year third in the NBA in 3-point percentage, and then got better. He was shooting between 43 and 45% from three. His shooting splits were absolutely absurd to start the season, and there just kind of has to be some of that, like, come back to earth. Like, you just kind of humanly can't shoot that well for an extended period of time. So I think there's a little bit of that the average just kind of finding itself. And as far as his role, like, I've kind of battled with this. Like, obviously, like, we've seen the good flashes of it. That Brooklyn game, I thought he was a real difference maker, having his time kind of running that second unit. I think where I'm kind of landing on it is I'm okay with continuing to experiment with it right now. Uh, but I think come postseason time, I don't want there to be a minute where it's not Harden or Embiid on the court. I think you have to split it and allow them. And as much as like I like the idea of Maxey being a focal point, I think he might be better off being like the second punch to either one of these guys. And he can play with both these guys. And the starting off the bench doesn't make that like big of a deal in the long run. The finishing lineups, obviously the more important thing. There's definitely going to be games where I think DeAnthony Melton has to be the closer just because we're never going to have a backcourt of James Harden and Tyrese Maxey that is plus defensively because they just have their for different reasons, but their own individual defensive lapses. So there's going to be games where it should be Melton closing. I think I'm kind of inching towards the camp of get Maxey back in the starting lineup, but I don't know. I think a lot of it is him just finding himself right now, and it's not something I'm super concerned about in the long run.
Yeah, I don't know. I had this in my notes. Like it's a question that I was gonna bring up regardless, just because I'm kind of in the middle right now too. You saw how well it can be facilitated with him coming off the bench and how well he played earlier on when he was just started coming off the bench, and now you see the other side of it now where it seems like he's really struggling to find his own shot. And I think at times it really benefits him to play alongside James Harden because Maxey is naturally a two. He's naturally a scoring guard. He's not really setting guys up, and he's oftentimes being the guy that's set up. Harden does such a great job of that he was flourishing alongside of him because Harden was making his life so much easier. We now see Maxey's coming in, headlining a backup unit, which is great, and him being the leading scorer in that unit is fantastic. It's what you want from him because it's what he's good at. But now he's being forced to create his own shot, and I think he's kind of falling back into that weird outside rhythm. Like, we talked about him not finding exactly the balance of a scorer versus a facilitator and being the backup point guard or the point guard that's coming off the bench. He's kind of falling back into that space. So I don't know. I think he needs a more defined role, something that's more set every time, but I don't know you're going to get that. I'm okay with him in the starting lineup. I'm okay with him off the bench. I just hope he's able to find that balance of becoming the scorer that we all know he can be. It sucks to see him only putting up 8 to 10 points because we know how much better he is than that. So I'm hoping, just more minutes alongside James Harden allows him to create more for himself and rather, not have to worry about creating it all on his own. Harden can help him out with that on the perimeter as well.
Also, real quick,
Yeah,
Doc Rivers saying that there's 3 different starting lineups is just a flat out lie. Like that is just not a thing.
When did he say that?
When he first benched Maxey, he said that they're going to have 3 different starting lineups. They're going to go based on matchup. And it has been the same exact starting lineup from, I think it's been like 10 games since then, maybe a little bit less than that. But yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, remember when he said, like, we're going to play Paul Reed against big lineups, or we're going to play DeAndre against big lineups, and we're going to play Paul against small lineups, and then, like, I don't know who it was, Kyle Newbeck or Paul Hudrick or somebody was like, but that's not what you did. And he got mad. But, like, literally, that's not what you did, so don't lie to me. Yeah, Doc Rivers is Doc Rivers, man. It is what it is. But, yeah, I think Maxey, he'll get it back. Like I said, he had those games off the bench where, he dropped 27, 32, what have you. So it's all about lineups for me. I think Shake Milton is the idea there that, like, that's supposed to be the facilitating point guard that's on the floor with him. But yeah, it's night and day difference when he gets to play with Harden. The defense is just paying more attention to Harden and Embiid, and Maxey can roam around. So even with him coming off the bench, there's the lineups with him, with Embiid and Harden. So it's all about coaching creativity, which we won't go there, but we'll see what happens. We'll see if he gets it back. But I think if he just starts making some shots, he'll get his confidence back, man. Obviously, that's a basketball thing that happens for a lot of guys. A couple shots go in, then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, look at now I'm rolling. I'm just tonight and in the past 2 games, I think he's just looked very passive and unsure of himself in those lineups. But we'll see. We'll see if he comes around and picks it back up. I hope he does. I think we forget how young he is, you know what I mean, too, because he has so much potential. And we're like, year 3 max, he's going to average 25 points per game. And then he comes in the beginning of the year and he was literally doing that. And the percentages were crazy. And then the injury and then coming back from the injury, I think we're probably just jumping the gun as far as, like, how young he is coming back from injury and then trying to figure out a new role coming off the bench. So I think you guys are right, man. I think I probably need to pump the brakes on Maxey coming off the bench and just see what it looks like, especially as as long as we're winning games, um, and he has time to figure it out. Again, people want to blow out against the Orlando Magic, but as you saw on Monday, and as you've seen against a lot of good teams this season, it's a team that can give you some trouble. So after Monday, once I realized that they weren't healthy in the beginning of the season, so we blew
Yeah.
them out by like 30 points earlier in the season without James Harden and Joel Embiid. I didn't even watch that game. I was so disinterested in it. I was at a bar, like kind of glancing at it on the TV. Now they're healthy and they just have a lot of guys with a lot of size. So people forget that. I was reminded on Monday night of that. So tonight I was just like, just get the win against this team because it's just such a weird matchup. And there's so many things that we struggle with against a team with those kind of 6'11" athletes. So just get the win, and I'm happy with it. So that's where I'm at with it. I'm not mad that we only won by a certain amount of points or that we were up by 15 and they made a run. I just thought like I saw what it was on Monday, So I'm just happy we didn't get upset at two in a row.
Yeah, and this Magic team, they compete, they play hard, they're young, and they all got stuff to prove, and they're showing that. And for Maxey, one more thing is like we also kind of forget just kind of what a like unique path he's kind of had in his NBA transition. Talking about like uh, played pretty sparingly his rookie season, coming off the bench, not a real role. Then all of a sudden thrust into like the true like starting point guard of a team as the Ben Simmons holdout comes out, and then like him going from the like pretty much number 2 option alongside Joel Embiid to then trying to fit in against another Super Bowl dominant player and James Harden getting added here. So it just hasn't been quite the same natural like growth, and that's not easy. And he's done a terrific job of handling it. And this is a kind of like the next kind of tough task for him to handle and figure out. And he's talented enough. He's got enough skills that he's definitely going to make it work. It's going to take some time to iron it out. So I'm not worried. And he's going to have nights like tonight where he does shoot 2 for 12 and he'll bounce back for sure. So we know he's going to keep working. We're good with it. And yeah, happy they got the win tonight for sure. At the end of the day, they all count the same on the win column no matter how many points it is. This Magic team is a sneaky tough matchup. And like you said, they beat the Celtics 3 times this year. They've got some like kind of significant wins based on how low they are in the standings. So glad they took care of business. And is this the last time that we play them this season? I think so.
I hope so, man. I feel like we play them every other night.
Yeah, but I hope so. So hopefully that's the last time we have to deal with that, and it's a good test for him at the least.
No, I think there is a couple in March. I think there's a back-to-back against the Magic in March. I think so. Or
Jeez.
another or no, Detroit. I'm thinking Detroit.
Okay.
I think I'm thinking Detroit, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I was gonna say the same thing, Sean. Like a win is a win at this point in the year, man. It's early February. These are the kind of the dog days of the NBA season. Just kind of trying to get to the All-Star break, stay healthy, do what you got to do, and get the wins. I'm not really worried too much about this. They just rattled off 7 in a row, and they lose to a Magic team that plays their ass off every night, has a lot to prove, and a lot of guys that are playing for their jobs right now. So I don't read too much into a loss on Monday night. And then you get a win tonight against the same team, and you get to move on. So at this point, I'm good with it. They played pretty well tonight. Everyone made it through the night healthy, and you get to move into the end of this week to try to continue this new winning streak. So I'm all good with it right now.
Yeah, man. There you have it, man. The Sixers win. I think I just lost my headphones. I can't hear myself now. But either way, the Sixers win. They escaped the Orlando Magic. We didn't lose 2 in a row. That's all I wanted. Pull out the W. Again, that team. That team is a tough matchup for a lot of NBA teams, and they have a lot of upsets this season. You get the Spurs on Friday, the Knicks on Sunday, and then the Boston Celtics next Wednesday. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, guys, thanks for coming through, man. Again, this is the Pick Swap podcast. They are on Apple Podcasts and all podcast platforms. It is Pick Swap Media on YouTube. The links will be in the description. Thank you guys for coming through. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for giving me your thoughts. And yeah, we'll do this again sometime soon, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you for having us. It was a blast always talking Sixers. So I thought we had some good convo, and yeah, always welcome to come back on for sure.
Appreciate it, man.
Later, guys. Go Sixers.